Is Varys really a eunuch, or is he maybe a woman in disguise? It's one of the questions I'm asked the most, so let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. If you like theories, background, history and lore about A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, this is the place for you. Welcome. Why do some fans of A Song of Ice and Fire believe that Varys might secretly be a woman? And do I agree? I am asked this question a lot in the comments here and on my live streams on my other channel, IDG Live. I've touched on it in a couple of videos, but given the interest, I thought it worth a video on its own, so here goes. Let's start with why some people suspect that there's more to Varys than meets the eye, so to speak. That although he, and I will call him he throughout this video just to avoid confusion, that although he is clearly a mysterious figure, he's hiding something even more fundamental. That he isn't a eunuch, he's a woman. Could he be? Technically, yes, inasmuch as we don't get to see what is under his robes or have any other 100% proof one way or the other, and he may well be a good enough actor to pull it off, but I think the evidence in support isn't very strong. Varys, of course, does give off feminine vibes, wearing robes for preference, speaking in a high-pitched voice, giggling. He wears perfumes, his hands are described as soft, and so on. One of the disguises he adopts is that of a woman, too, as Tyrion discovers. A woman sidled into the light, plump, soft, matronly, with the round pink moon of a face and heavy dark curls. Tyrion recoiled. "Is something amiss?" she asked. Varys, he realised, with annoyance. And Varys at least once refers to himself as like an old woman, while several people disdainfully comment in various ways that he isn't a man. That's a lot of woman vibes going on, which you could interpret, and some have interpreted, as evidence that he is secretly a woman, but equally it could be evidence that he isn't. Would he really lean into the feminine energy if he was trying to convince everyone that he wasn't a woman? Personally, I doubt it. In truth, Varys gives off eunuch vibes to the characters in the story. None of the characters who meet him question this rather basic fact about him, including the usually very astute characters like Tyrion. So let's go a bit deeper and ask why he might disguise himself in the first place. If you are a woman, why would you disguise yourself as a eunuch so completely for so long? I suppose the argument here is twofold. First, no one suspects a eunuch. They can't have children, so can't establish a legacy or noble house. They are often patronised and assumed not to be capable of more demanding tasks, so they can get away with quite a lot simply because no one suspects them. Varys certainly makes use of this. But is that really that different to how women are treated in that rather misogynistic world? So perhaps it's not that he doesn't want people to know that he's a woman in general, but a specific woman. The whole eunuch thing is just an even stronger disguise. Many have noted that he keeps his hair shaved. Is that to hide the fact that it is a distinctive colour, perhaps Valyrian silver? Well, perhaps we're now getting somewhere. He was born in Lys, and the predominant colouring there is silver gold hair. There's a lot of Valyrian blood there, and probably some Targaryen or Blackfire blood too. Certainly you can find a lot of linguistic hints in the text that link Varys to Targaryens. Only Targaryens know all the secrets of the Red Keep's tunnels, and Varys. His head is the shape of an egg, like Egg from Dunk and Egg, that kind of thing. And several fans have gone even further and speculated that he might be Illyrio's wife, or Youngriff's mother, or perhaps aunt, something that might help explain his apparent commitment to getting Youngriff onto the throne, assuming he is a Blackfire. But how could we possibly know? This, I'm afraid, is where I believe all the theorising starts to fall down. How could we tell? Well, in the absence of a POV chapter or a confession, probably the best indicator is how he is when he thinks he can let his guard down a bit, when he's with someone about to die or with someone who actually knows who he truly is. Thankfully, we do have a couple of examples of this, so let's take a look. And let's start with that scene in Book 1, where Arya sees Varys and Illyrio meeting in secret beneath the Red Keep. Varys is with his partner in plotting, clearly unguarded as he is spilling a lot of secrets that would show he is a traitor. He doesn't think anyone is listening in. And in this context, Arya, who has no hidden agenda here at all, in fact she doesn't even know what's going on, thinks Varys is a man, based on how he looks, his voice and so on. She thinks that 3 times. But perhaps even more damningly, Illyrio also treats Varys like a man in his language usage. He jokes that Varys is a sorcerer, not a sorceress. Remember, there is no need for those two to pretend Varys is anything other than he is at that moment in time. And he calls him his old friend. Not what you would call your beloved wife, or even probably your sister-in-law. So all the context clues here are that when Varys is off guard and with an old friend who knows the truth, he comes across as a man, not a woman. The other example we have is with Kevan. When speaking to Kevan, having shot him with a crossbow in the epilogue to A Dance with Dragons, Varys appears his usual self, slippers, powdered hands and so on, but his voice seemed lower, as if the higher-pitched voice was the disguise he usually used, but didn't need to in that moment. He was actually more masculine than his public profile. So the context clues for when Varys is alone actually don't suggest that he is secretly a woman. But let's take a look at the timelines. Do they work for Varys secretly being young Griff's mother or someone like that? Well, the first thing you have to acknowledge with the timelines is how long this con would have had to go on for. Varys moved to King's Landing sometime in the year 278, or perhaps the next year. We are now at the year 300 AC, so that's 22 years of being Varys the Eunuch, and he was headhunted for the role before that, so he must have been known as Varys the Eunuch in Pentos for some time before that as well. We don't know Varys' exact age, but that must surely be the vast majority of his adult life, a quarter of a century or more of being in a full-time disguise. That's a long, long con. And for what? What actual gain is there appearing as a eunuch rather than a woman for that long? We've had at least 2 Mistress of Whisperers before, so it's not as if anyone thought that role couldn't be filled by a woman. But probably even more damning to this theory is the fact that the disguise would have had to start before young Griff was born. Well before. Tyrion estimates that young Griff is 15 or 16 years old, so 6 years after Varys arrived in King's Landing. If you hold that young Griff is actually Aegon, son of Rhaegar, as claimed, then he would be perhaps 18. That's still 3 or 4 years after Varys arrived. So if we are to hold that Varys is secretly a woman, we have to hold that he has held up that act for a quarter of a century, without pause, and even in secret with someone who knows his true identity. Indeed, when his guard is down, he seems to go even further the other way, appearing more masculine. And if we further are to hold that the reason why he has kept up this act for almost his entire adult life is to get and keep his position as Master of Whisperers in King's Landing without suspicion in order to aid young Griff's path to power, we have to hold that the decision to adopt that persona was taken several years before young Griff was even conceived. And almost certainly several years before he was headhunted, or knew he might be headhunted for the role of Master of Whisperers. Why adopt that disguise before even having a reason to adopt that disguise? Simply put, I don't think the timeline supports this theory, and I don't think the real-world advantage of being perceived as a eunuch rather than a woman, or even a different man — Varys is definitely capable of adopting that disguise — is enough to justify the time and energy needed to keep up the pretense for so long. Which isn't to say I don't think there's any merit to these ideas. Varys is a mystery, and we shouldn't take his account of his youth at face value. We don't have any other witnesses to what he says, and he is a professional liar. There must be a reason why he is so set on supporting young Griff. It's not just for the good of the realm, I'm sure. But it's almost certainly also not because he is young Griff's mother or aunt or someone like that. Did you know that I'm now uploading these lore videos to Spotify as well? If that works for you as a way to listen or view, just head over there and search for Deep Geek. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos like this, there's a link to my playlist on the left of your screen now. Or to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.